This story is about Parker, who is going through a rough patch in his life after splitting up with his wife Bonnie. As he navigates the challenges of divorce and parenting, he finds himself torn between relief and anxiety as he gets closer to new friends and opens the doors to possible love. Ultimately, Parker learns that in his pursuit of a new life and new relationships, he can find not only healing but also a fresh start. Have you ever been suspected of a serious crime that you didn't commit? It's not that it's a good thing, but I had to face it. I tried not to look for problems at all, and I was extremely calm and inconspicuous. But then, all the problems came at once and I had to clean up this sheet. I'm Parker and my wife Bonnie, and I have been together for 5 eventful years. We met the week before Christmas during my senior year of high school. At that time, my sole ambition was to have as many girls as I could. Bonnie proved to be the challenge I couldn't conquer. Looking back on it, I wish I'd accepted defeat then and there. Instead, I kept trying to win her over throughout my last year of high school. Graduation marked the start of my downfall, even though I wanted to start playing my instrument as soon as possible. In fact, everything turned out the opposite of what I'd hoped for. After a night out together, we found out she was pregnant. 2 months later, we had to think about honeymoon options for expectant mothers. I was really hoping to go to I've been postponing college for now. I've always been interested in computer programming and took a few college-level courses in my last 2 years of high school. I know SQL really well and can easily create queries, views, functions, and stored procedures. I can also create triggers for complex data scenarios. I've also learned how to use the tools and resources on the internet to improve my skills. I can work from anywhere with Wi-Fi, which is great. I'm currently under house arrest for the next 10 months due to an altercation in a nightclub where I resorted to physical violence. Despite not being a physically imposing individual, I find myself under house arrest for the next 10 months. This incident marked the first altercation I've had since grade school, and it was more of an ambush than a fair fight. Luckily, I managed to avoid felony charges after Bonnie gave birth to our son. We had a pretty good 6 months after that. I had a decent programming job in an office with about a dozen other programmers. Bonnie and I engaged in adult activities despite being only 20 and rather inexperienced in many aspects of life. Bonnie insists she took her birth control pills, but here we are in the doctor's office. We had a sonogram that showed 3 sets of tiny hands and feet. Everything went well. Bonnie gave birth to Bon first, then Connie, and finally Danny completed our family. I'm seriously thinking about getting sterilized before we expand our family further. Dealing with a stubborn toddler who feels neglected compared to his whining sisters can be exhausting. That night, Bonnie's parents looked after Bonnie while I went out for dinner at a franchise restaurant. I then went to a nightclub with a live band, which was our first time at a bar since turning 21. The place was crowded, which made it difficult to chat and dance. We went to a different nightclub without a live band but with a jukebox and a dance floor where around 40 people were having a good time after a few dances. We also had a few drinks and found ourselves seated near 3 other couples, all strangers. The men were chatting about sports, while the women were discussing something else. Some other men approached our table and invited the ladies to dance. 2 agreed, while 2 declined. I observed Bonnie joining a man on the dance floor after a couple of lively dances. She returned later, and a different man asked her to dance. She glanced at me, and I nodded my approval as they danced together for a few fast and slow songs. It seemed like there was no inappropriate behavior on the dance floor. I excused myself to visit the restroom, and when I returned, Bonnie was nowhere to be found. Despite my efforts to search, I couldn't find her. I stepped outside and saw a man with his right hand between Bonnie's legs, outside her jeans, touching her. It looked like she was returning the favor with her hands around his neck, while his left hand was touching her inappropriately under her blouse. Their faces were close together, and he didn't seem to mind. I stepped in and gave him a sharp kick just below the knee, which made him cry out in pain. I then pushed him against the wall, which made him collapse. I kept kicking him until he stopped. He kept misbehaving. My last kick seemed to have a big effect, maybe even on his reproductive organs. Security showed up pretty quickly after that. I turned to Bonnie and asked her what she was doing. She didn't answer, so I don't know how she managed to get home. I thought about whether alcohol was involved in this inappropriate behavior. Our group found ourselves after my parents posted bail for me and brought me home. Bonnie was in a holding cell with 6 other people. She kept apologizing, but I told her that apologies don't explain why you did something when you're ready to talk about it, so please don't say anything until then. She never explained why she did it. We didn't have sex for a while because there was a lot of tension in the house. Despite our financial constraints, Bonnie tried to avoid conflicts in the household. I didn't think that hiring a top-tier attorney would have made a difference. I got 11 months under house arrest, which meant I could only leave my home for medical emergencies or transportation by ambulance or police car. My constant presence became overwhelming for Bonnie. She started socializing with neighbors over coffee to cope, but I found it easier to spend time with my family. Fortunately, my boss was understanding and let me take part in online meetings to keep up with project requirements and progress. The next challenge came less than a month into my confinement. Bonnie said she couldn't bear sitting idle every night while I was. Since that incident at the supermarket where I was groped, I've been thinking about my choices. I met someone there and we're going out on a date on Friday night. I was going to stay calm and speak sensibly, but I was really scared and ran to our bedroom and locked the door. I told her that if she kept going, I'd leave my husband. I went to the bedroom. I called both sets of parents, who said they'd come over. My parents, Julie and Mark, are quite similar. Julie and Edith both look after their families, but Julie sometimes wears trousers, while Edith only wears floor-length dresses. My dad and Roger are similar in that they like fashion. I told the group about Bonnie's complaints, despite Edith's attempts to persuade her to come out. The situation quickly escalated, with heated exchanges. Bonnie abruptly ended the evening with a chilling ultimatum: if you ever want to see your grandchildren again, you will stay out of my personal life. Our parents' expressions of sympathy were. As they said their goodbyes, Bonnie went back to the bedroom and locked the door, leaving me to spend another night on the couch. Bonnie was hardly home for the rest of the week, and I had no idea where she was. I ended up responsible for 2 kids who needed to be fed and looked after, so I arranged for a visit from a divorce lawyer, which left me. I felt trapped with few options unless Bonnie was proven unfit as a mother. I faced nearly 18 years of child support, along with expenses for spousal support, housing and other obligations on Friday evening just past 6. Bonnie made a disrespectful remark: "I'm not sure if I'll return tonight." I pleaded with Bonnie one final time not to leave, but she drove away, which I took to mean the end of our marriage. It was 12 a.m. morning, my phone rang, but I didn't recognize the number, so I let it go to voicemail. When I heard the message tone, I decided to listen. "This is Abby from University Hospital. I'm calling to let you know that your wife, Bonnie, has been admitted. She's not in danger, but she'll need surgery tomorrow. I wanted to inform you that my number is part of I felt like I was doing the right thing, but I couldn't leave the house. Had he harmed her? Was she in a car accident? Was he behind the wheel?" I couldn't sleep, thinking about these questions. The hungry cries of the 3 little ones only added to my exhaustion. By the time the roosters announced dawn at 8, I was drained. Morning. The doorbell interrupted my thoughts as I approached the front door. I noticed a sleek sedan parked behind my car. The man standing at the door showed me his badge and asked, "Is Parker Douglas here?" "That would be me." "How can I help you?" "Detective John, isn't it?" "Call me John. Are you aware that your wife is in the hospital?" I asked him if he had any idea where my wife was. He said he didn't know, but that he should have done some research. I told him that I had a monitor on my ankle, and he apologized for not checking it. I asked him if he knew anyone who might want to harm my wife, but he said that he didn't. The hospital had called to say that she was there, and that was all he knew. "What happened, Parker? You seem rather perplexed. Care to elaborate?" "She decided to end our marriage last night and went on a date. I somewhat hope her companion assaulted her severely." His expression turned grave. Nothing of that sort, as far as I know. As she was leaving a motel room, she was physically attacked. There's no indication of sexual assault from her. Her face is badly bruised, but the worst damage is to her left hand. Each finger was broken with a hammer. They left a message on her face with a black marker. Despite the grim news, I found myself smiling. I had no involvement whatsoever in this. I can't help you, John. If you'll excuse me, I hear children who need feeding again. I considered reaching out to. I thought about telling Bonnie's parents what I knew, but I decided she should handle that conversation herself. The day was full of the usual chaos of looking after the kids, feeding, bathing, changing nappies, and so on. I only had time for 10 minutes of TV, and my programming projects were piling up, so I knew I'd be coding late again. It was just past 4. Morning. My phone rang, and it was Bonnie. I let it go to voicemail. Parker, I don't know if you're aware, but I was assaulted last night. They performed surgery on my left hand today. All my fingers and thumb are broken, and my entire hand is in a cast. Could you arrange for someone to drop off a change of clothes for me when I'll be home tomorrow? How are my babies? Please give me a call. It's as if I'm a damn caretaker. Screw you. Put on your provocative outfit and go home during dinner. My favorite detective showed up at my doorstep. Mr. DeBlas, I have a search warrant for your residence. John, no need to be so formal. Please come in. Would you like something to drink? No thank you. I stayed quiet as they took my computers and did a thorough search. John's assistants exchanged glances, indicating they found nothing. John, what's going on? There's been a related assault. It seems to be a case of sexual retaliation. We've connected this individual to your wife. His genitals were mutilated, and the same message was written on them. On his face in black marker, I wrote, "This must be painful, similar to Bonnie's assault." I had no involvement in this whatsoever. Well, it seems like Kara's caught up with him. Best of luck with your investigation. Oh, and since you're confiscating my phone, could you please call my dad for me? John dialed Mark's number. I asked him if he could you lend me a laptop and get me a cheap disposable phone? My parents arrived with dinner, and I filled them in on what I knew. My mom was what I was already thinking. She deserves it. Bonnie kept sending messages that made it seem like she was the victim of a random incident rather than showing any remorse for ending the marriage. I didn't respond to her voicemails or texts on Sunday. Around noon, she arrived at our house in a car. The kids were excited to see her. I tried to stay in other parts of the house for the rest of the day, even though she was struggling with the kids. I ignored her requests for help. Then retreat to the bedroom and I'll take care of it. Parker, please don't act this way. We're still married. I'll be in this cast for at least 10 weeks, so I need your cooperation. I ignored her and went to my office space with headphones on and music blocking out my surroundings. I managed to get some work done and caught the start of dinner cooking. I then felt a tap on my shoulder. Bonnie passed me a note saying that the kids needed baths. I couldn't risk getting my cast wet, so I went into the bedroom when John returned my computers and phone. He told me that my browser history and cell phone activity were of no use to them. It was satisfying to be able to say, "I told you so." Bonnie then asked John about the recovery of her rings, including my wedding band, had been taken off her fingers before the attack. John said that no rings had been found or handed in. We were at an impasse. Bonnie tried to exert influence, but I stood firm until she left the room. She tried to influence me every day, but I was determined to stand my ground. On Thursday, Bonnie came out of the bedroom looking sexy while I was on the phone with Edith. She told me I had plans for another date, but I wasn't sure if I'd be back that night. I looked at her, and it became clear that I needed a divorce. I refused to be a second-class husband. I knew I'd miss my kids, but I felt like I'd reached my limit. Edith said she'd take the kids to their doctor's appointment on Friday and told me she was upset about what Bonnie'd done, but she was there for me too. I was too overwhelmed to think straight, but my kids were there for me and that gave me hope. In the future, I was asleep when my phone suddenly rang. I saw an unfamiliar number and let it go to voicemail. Later, I heard a notification tone and listened to the message. Mr. DeBlas, this is Mary from University Hospital. Your wife, Bonnie, has been admitted. I'm reaching out as a courtesy. You can reach me at. This is a repeat of our first encounter. I doubted she was with the same person. Injuries like those don't heal so quickly. Perhaps this person had assaulted her. It was disturbing to realize that part of me wished for her demise due to her injuries. I know it's twisted, but my life is in utter chaos right now. After taking a sip of whiskey and drifting into I was so tired that I forgot all about Bonnie. I was just about to have a coffee when John arrived. Good to see you again, John. What's the latest? We're determined to catch you. Give it your best shot, John. I'm just as clueless as you are. Same message on the man. Yes, on Bonnie. A second message. You're a slow learner. You mentioned broken fingers. Right hand this time. That's correct. She'll be incapacitated for quite some time. It's unfortunate for her. Don't expect me to come to her. Before they took my phones, I called my dad to ask if I could use his laptop again. I also said I needed another disposable phone. Luckily, all my work is stored in the cloud. I had the sense to back everything up, transfer it to thumb drives, and ask my dad to keep it safe. On Friday around 4 p.m. morning, I got a call from Bonnie, or at least someone calling on her behalf. She sounded stressed about how she'd managed this and that, without realizing I wasn't that bothered. Maybe her parents will give her a place to stay for dinner. Julie stopped by to help with the kids when my phone rang. She saw it was Bonnie and picked up, turning on the speakerphone. Parker, you need to. Bonnie, this is Julie. Don't expect Parker or any of his friends to help you. Julie, I've told you to stay out of my personal business. Put Parker on the line. She offered me the phone, but I said no, so she hung up on me on Sunday. Bonnie tried to contact me again, but I didn't answer. I don't know where she is. John called me back. I got a call from the electronics company a few days earlier with the same warning that they still suspect my involvement. On Monday morning, I was surprised by an unexpected visitor, Edith. What brings you here? I'm here to assist you with the children. What about Bunny? She's staying with you, isn't she? No, she asked us to mind our own business, so we've stopped answering her calls. We haven't seen her since the night she instructed us to stay out of her life. I believe she's staying with one of her friends. It might be someone from her wedding party. If so, please come in. Would you like some coffee, Black? Where are my babies? Edith stayed out of my way and spent the entire day looking after the children when they were asleep. She took care of the laundry and did some general cleaning. Initially, I thought it was just for one day, but she has returned every day since. Some days, Roger joins her. I managed to catch up on my work projects and even had time for a guilt I haven't heard from Bonnie or Edith. My lawyer said it was a good time to start divorce proceedings because Bonnie has basically abandoned the kids. She's staying for dinner, so I can plan my day as if I were still married. The chaos is gone, and things are more peaceful. But I have time to think about my situation with Bonnie and my feelings towards her. The grandparents visit several times a week. They have a much better relationship than Bonnie and I ever did. When the kids have a medical appointment, one of the grandparents usually takes them. Once the paperwork was prepared, Bonnie was served. Her voicemails were filled with explicit language and threats. I chose not to delete them, thinking they might offer the court a clearer understanding of Bonnie's behavior. Given my limited mobility and the lawyer's meetings, I needed to be able to refer to them. The hearing took place in my front yard. I was hoping this would shame Bonnie. The other side was determined to argue for Bonnie's custody rights and to secure child support from me. We made similar claims against Bonnie. We said that she needed to find employment to contribute to child support given her skill set. It seemed unlikely she could manage this without resorting to earnings from escort services. The initial court hearing didn't go well for Bonnie. My lawyer made it seem like I was the only one supporting the kids for the past 8 weeks. They did this by saying that because of her injuries, Bonnie couldn't use her hands. When I was asked why I wasn't helping her out, my lawyer showed the court depositions from Bonnie's 2 lovers with injured genitalia. I told the court that I didn't approve of Bonnie having an affair. Bonnie and her legal team talked for several minutes. Then my lawyer presented a note to the court that my lawyer said Bonnie could have made up just to make things seem more dramatic. Bonnie's lawyers didn't have any evidence about where the note came from. I wasn't involved in making it. We're waiting to see what happens next. The court asked Bonnie for more documents about leaving the children. My lawyer thinks this is good for our case. Bonnie came back to the house and found all her stuff in the laundry room, which really annoyed her. My lawyer said I should let her back in, even though I wanted the kids to turn her away. They didn't, though. While holding Connie, she tried a different approach. "Parker, what do I need to do to move past this? I still love you and I think you love me too. I'm sorry for hurting you. I was young, but I've grown up a lot since then. Bonnie, you've got it wrong. I don't love you anymore. The sooner I can get you out of my life, the better. I'm not leaving you. You'll still have to deal with me when you visit your children." I was getting really frustrated, so I went to my office. We have an upcoming court date. Bonnie was asleep on the couch, and we didn't speak to each other much. It was like before, when she only had one working hand. I took care of things when Bonnie was in her room. When our case was called, Bonnie seemed happy to see her parents in prison. She hadn't seen them since the argument before her first court appearance, but she waved at them. However, they ignored her. Her mood changed when my lawyer asked Edith to come to the stand. "Edith, can I call you that?" "Yes, Bonnie is your daughter." "Have you disowned her?" "Why is that?" "She's promiscuous and not fit to raise my grandchildren. Parker is more than capable of caring for them while Bonnie is away. I was incapacitated and engaging in promiscuous behavior. Parker was at home, looking after the children. She's abandoned them. I won't allow my precious angels to grow up thinking that promiscuity is an acceptable lifestyle choice." "Isn't it true that Parker is currently under house arrest?" "Yes, but that's because he assaulted someone he believed was harming Bonnie. It turns out she was engaging in promiscuous behavior that night too." No further questions. Bonnie's attorney wisely chose not to cross-examine. Let's take a look at the celebratory highs. After I was granted custody and Bonnie was ordered to pay child support, things got pretty intense. My lawyer showed the judge some threatening voicemails I'd recorded, and the judge said I had to supervise Bonnie's visits for the first 3 months. I was expecting to feel pretty good about finally being free. I was actually a bit melancholy and relieved at the same time. Not much changed back at the house. Edith visited every day and she and Julie took charge of my romantic life. I made it clear that finding a romantic partner wasn't a priority, but then one Saturday morning, Carmen showed up at my doorstep. Edith had invited her over and Carmen was there to help with the kids. She had a son who was just a week older than Adam. Her husband had died in a car accident when she was 5 months pregnant. She was 2 years older than me and worked in customer support for an insurance agency. It was obvious to everyone that this was a setup, but I didn't object while the kids slept. Carmen and I sat at the kitchen table. We sat down and talked. I told her about my house arrest, and she told me about her late husband. Just as I was about to tell her about Bonnie, there was a knock on the front door. "Bonnie, good to see you. The kids are asleep now. I assume the lady with you is overseeing today." "Yes, this is Margot Hansen." I greeted Margot with a handshake before checking her credentials. Edith waved goodbye as she exited through the back door. I welcomed Margot and Bonnie inside. "Bonnie, this is Carmen, a dear friend of mine. Her son Chad is asleep with Adam. You, Bonnie. Bonnie, you roused the kids while I showed Carmen to the door. Would you like me to bring dinner tonight? We're close friends, after all." I gave her a kiss, which she returned. "I'd love to see you tonight." Bonnie observed me closely as I spoke with Carmen. Everyone watched as she waved goodbye. I was excited at the thought of having dinner with a woman for the first time in 6 months. After feeding the kids and putting them down for a nap, I took a quick shower, shaved and applied a touch of aftershave. I selected a nice I changed into a clean shirt and jeans while Carmen rang the doorbell. She'd changed clothes too, and helped me with the dishes while the boys were playing. The casserole she brought was enough to last me for several days. We chatted until nearly midnight, which I really appreciated. Carmen wasn't just a passive listener, she encouraged me. I had to persuade Bonnie that I was innocent of the assaults. I don't know if she believes me, but I'm telling the truth. It was almost midnight when she hugged Chad and left. I asked her to meet again, and she said yes. The kiss was much more passionate than the one with Peck. I'd previously thought I didn't need female companionship, but I spent the entire night tossing and turning. Edith arrived early on Sunday, eager to hear about how things had gone with Bonnie. However, she quickly shifted the conversation to discuss Carmen. I remained reserved. I don't think any woman would be interested in a young father with 4 mouths to feed and care for, but I might be mistaken. Carmen brings over a casserole every Saturday with 2 more months of house arrest. My entertainment options are limited to television or music. When Carmen requested music, she pulled me up to dance, but I struggled to prevent my arousal from showing. Unfortunately, she succeeded in provoking a reaction. Parker, I'm not prepared to dive into another relationship, but it's empowering to know I still captivate you. Can you handle taking things slow? I believe so. My thoughts are jumbled. I'm unsure of what I want. Does that make sense? I know it's a lot to take in. I can't even imagine what you've been through, and I'm equally certain you can't understand my experiences. It will take time. Edith had asked me to look after the kids on weekends. On Tuesday, she asked me to take a seat, Parker. I don't want to control your life, but I might have to. I had a chat with Carmen's mom last night. Last night, we spoke to Carmen's mom. She told us that her daughter's car had broken down and she couldn't afford to pay for the repairs, especially with the costs of rent and childcare. She only had a few £100 left each month. Do you think we could take care of Chad and save her the childcare costs? I think it would be a nice gesture, but I'm still in need of your assistance. Could you tell me how much she needs for the car repairs? I feel like I owe her for the casserole she's been bringing over. Thank you, Parker. I'll find out about the car the next morning. Carmen showed up at my doorstep. A lady was sitting in the driver's seat, waving at me. Carmen had a spark in her eyes. Thank you, Parker. This means a lot. No problem. See you later. Fixing Carmen's car cost about $300. I thought it was worth it to see Carmen every day. Our greetings and farewells now resemble those exchanged by lovers. The hugs were more passionate. My period of house arrest had concluded, so I seized the chance to go for a 10. I suggested to Carmen that she could arrange to have Friday off if she wanted to, as I was planning a full-day date for us. Edith could look after the kids, but both Edith and Julie have other commitments. That sounds great, so I'll give her a call later to confirm. I'll give you a call later today from the office. A few hours later, our date was set. I was really excited. Friday went really well. I picked up Carmen and Chad early. I dropped Chad off at my place, where Edith was looking after him. Then we headed to the marina. The 3-hour guided tour gave us some much-needed time to enjoy the amusement park, which is now open. We spent the next 5 hours hopping from one queue to another. It was time to head back to Parker. I said, I'm tired of waiting for you to take the initiative. Can I stay over tonight? He said, let me think. How about staying for the weekend? Once the kids were asleep, I pondered. I didn't want to seem too eager, but I also didn't want to seem disinterested. I made us drinks and then suggested, let's watch some TV in the bedroom. I sensed that Carmen was wrestling with the same thoughts. We barely laughed for a minute on the bed before getting swept up in a passionate kiss. Our actions felt instinctual. I squeezed her breast through her clothes, And she scratched. Once we'd both acknowledged our desires, my zipper opened and our clothes vanished. The glow of the television revealed our toned bodies. Carmen noticed my thin chest. I wasn't portraying a macho image at that moment. I'm still on birth control. Are you confident you're free of any diseases? I got tested when everything started, and I have all the results. The tests came back negative, so I believe I'm fine. I've never been tested, so you'll have to trust that I'm clean. I'm ready to take it all the way. I was ready to go on Saturday, and it was the best day I'd had in a year. We made love while the kids were asleep, with a shortage of car seats. We ordered from an Italian restaurant while we were gone. Lunch with the kids. Carmen's phone rang. It was her mother calling. She answered the call in the living room, away from the kitchen. When she came back, her complexion was pale. I need to go to my mom. My father had a heart attack and is on life support. Can you gather Chad's things? I'll arrange travel in such a situation. I expressed my condolences, assured her of my support, and shed a tear with her. I think I was crying for her pain as much as I was for the loss of her presence. I was at the airport in less than 90 minutes. I wasn't sure where I stood with her. Our relationship was casual and friends with benefits, but was there more to it? A couple of nights and a day of intimacy doesn't necessarily imply anything deeper. However, I couldn't deny my feelings for Carmen went beyond mere did she feel the same way about me, or was I just hoping she did? We needed to have a conversation. Carmen called late in the day. Her flight was on schedule, and she comforted her mother while her father fought for his life. It wasn't the right time to discuss our relationship. Her father survived, albeit in a diminished state. Brain damage from lack of oxygen left him unable to care for himself. I didn't hear much from Carmen. I left her messages, she left me messages. It seemed like I had my answer. Edith and Julie noticed I was sad and started trying to set me up again, without any of the previous restrictions. The few dates I went on were more conventional. I quickly learned to mention my 4 young children right away, as I had thought there wouldn't be many chances to date. I finally got closure with Carmen in the form of a 2-page letter. Her father passed away and she decided to stay on the East Coast. She really enjoyed our time together and wished me well in finding someone new. I have to admit that I traded in my sedan for an SUV to accommodate 4 car seats and another adult. The grocery store cashiers were really helpful, ensuring I didn't buy anything inappropriate for my family. I stayed optimistic that I'd find love again, because otherwise it would be too disheartening. A year after Carmen left, Edith found me alone. Parker, I got word from Carmen's mom. Edith seemed unsure of my reaction. How are they hoping she hadn't burned bridges? I've always liked Carmen's mom. What's her name again? Chuckling, Edith replied, Parker, you know who I mean. If you're asking me, I'd welcome her back without hesitation. Thanks to all the grandparents, we're doing a great job of raising 5 fantastic kids. We try to manage on Carmen and my incomes alone, but the grandparents tend to spoil the kids with purchases that exceed our budget. Bonnie remarried about a year after the divorce was finalized, although she still visits. She's a bit behind on her child support payments to the kids. She's more like a sporadic visitor than a mother figure. They see Nana Edith as their primary maternal figure. Carmen and I had a simple courthouse wedding. Neither of us wants any more children. 5 is plenty. No charges were ever brought against anyone. No one has been held responsible for the attacks on Bonnie or her partners. Bonnie and her parents are still estranged, but I still think of Edith and Roger as the loving grandparents they are at Christmas. 3.5 years on from Bonnie's departure, I found myself alone in the kitchen with Edith. I was curious, so I asked her. She showed me the 2 rings she was wearing. She moved her hand so I could see the one on her ring finger and then the other on her pinky. She winked and said, "This one is my wedding band and this one belonged to my mother." I was surprised by what I'd heard. She made a secretive gesture and whispered, "Shoo, that's a secret." The story grabs you from the very first lines, as it depicts the main character's complex emotional journey. I was captivated as I followed him through disappointments, hopes, and unpredictable twists of fate. Parker's experiences make you reflect on how we endure and overcome difficulties in life.